Good evening. And listen, I just want to first of all welcome you to the grounds and campus of Signs and Wonders Ministries. We are so honored and humbled to host this great event this evening, Richmond Public Safety Forum. Ecclesiastes 5 and 3, and I'm not going to preach, I promise you. It just says this, for a dream cometh through the multitude of businesses. One of the translations for that is just a multitude of communication. This evening is an opportunity for us to communicate, and I think that is one that we should not take lightly. We will be Zooming this on Facebook Live, so that audience will be here and a part of this, and so we're just excited to do that. So you're welcome on this campus, and we pray that this be a pleasant stay for you on this evening. First on our program, we're going to bring to us, this actually is my second time introducing the Attorney General, as we talked in a mental health forum a few months ago. But we're so happy to have him with us. Can you just give him a hand for being here with us this evening? And so with nothing further for me to say, I'm going to introduce and bring up at this time our Attorney General, Jason Mraz. Come on.
Pastor, thank you so much for opening up your place of worship. And I know it might be difficult in the house of worship when you're at the pulpit to voluntarily give up the microphone. But it is wonderful. You've been a wonderful friend and mentor to so many. And thank you so much for how you shepherd your flock. I think one of the most important qualities for anybody in any position of power is to listen. And I know that sometimes that's hard because people in public office love to opine on their opinions and their thoughts. Apparently, one of the shocks for me when I took this office is that my official title is general. And I did not serve in the military, so it was bizarre for me when people started calling me general. And I kept looking over my shoulder thinking there was a Marine commandant or somebody standing behind me. But as I told my staff, I have 3 daughters. So I may be a general in the office, but I'm a private at home. And so please just call me Jason. And I would ask everybody here to do the same. We're here today because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people hurting. We have gone through a lot, our American family. I love to say we are part of an amazing, beautiful, diverse American family. And candidly, the last couple of years have been hard. COVID was not easy. And you have seen the results of that. The analogy I use is a little bit, it's like squeezing the air in a balloon. There's a lot of drastic measures done to defeat this virus we had never seen before, but now we're seeing the aftershocks of that. If you ever had a loved one that has dealt with depression or a loved one that has dealt with addiction, they'll tell you, social isolation is the worst box they can ever find themselves in. And that's what happened to 300 million Americans. That's what happened to a lot of young people. One of the articles of my faith is a Latin term, and I'm not smart enough to speak Latin, but I know what it means. Imago Dei means image of God. It means every person that I ever meet in my life, no matter who they are, no matter what station they're in life, no matter their background, has amazing intrinsic value because they're made in the image of their Creator. That also means they have amazing potential. How do we unlock that potential? We launched Operation Ceasefire because we were, first 6 months of my administration, we just went around the state and we listened to people. What are they sharing with us? What are they seeing? And one constant refrain in several cities we heard was, there's too many of our fellow citizens looking over their shoulder in fear. That breaks my heart. I want people to wake up in the morning being able to chase their dreams, their hopes and their aspirations, not looking over their shoulders in fear. And so a collaborative effort, when we see that there's been an uptick in crime, what we realize is that there's not one way to get out of this. First of all, you can't arrest your way out of it. But you also have to realize that so much of what's driving what we've seen in crime really starts, as we've often seen, with our young people. I've talked and met in private rooms. I've been to Wallens Ridge and Red Onion and St. Bride's, and I met with those that are currently in the system about to get out, those that have been caught up in gang violence. The one thing I would always, on a regular basis, hear so many young people when they're at that age, 14, 15, 16, 17, there's this overwhelming desire to feel like they belong, to feel connection. And I would talk to those that would tell me, hey, some of the best programs and activities we can have to alleviate young people from going down the path of gang violence is after-school activities, after-school programs, and our churches. Why did we have closed for 12 to 18 months? Because of COVID. So these great avenues for young people to feel the sense of belonging was taken away from us. But unfortunately, some bad actors, their activities weren't shut down, and they were recruiting. And so we view, when we launched Operation Ceasefire, as kind of two parallel tracks. We want to invest in gang prevention. We want to work with our community service boards and our Boys and Girls Club in each of our individual cities of how we're going to get young people engaged. We want people that are leaving the system to have proper reentry services so we can connect them with an employer, because ultimately there's dignity in work. We want money and grants for mentoring for so many young people that are coming out of these difficult situations. We have a mental health crisis in this country. 1 in 3 teenage girls, according to the CDC, have had suicidal thoughts or iteration in the last 12 months. We want job training and life skills. We want to make sure that young people know that we're investing in them so they can go chase their dreams. And so on that rail, we want people to know that we're investing in them so they can both chase their dreams and become fantastic members of our community. But then on the flip side, for those that have crossed that line, that are those repeat violent offenders, I'm not talking about an individual that's made one mistake. I'm talking about repeat violent offenders, those that are victimizing more and more people. Then they need to be held accountable. And so the second parallel track is, listen, we're going to prosecute gun crime. We're going to hold those people that decide they're not going to respect their neighbors, they're not going to respect the city of Richmond, or the other localities we're located in, Portsmouth, Norfolk, Danville, Roanoke, Lynchburg, Petersburg. If you're not going to respect your neighbors, if you're going to decide to cross that line and commit violence against your neighbor, you're going to be held accountable. I've had a chance to meet with the victims of violent crime, one-on-one. I could tell you, there's no anguish like a mom that has lost her baby to senseless violence. It's heartbreaking. It's soul-piercing. I have an amazing job, but it's their stories, what they've shared with me, that have stayed with me. And their biggest fear is that their loved one is somehow going to be just a number, forgotten. And their empty chair at every Thanksgiving or Christmas or birthday celebration is forgotten. We want to be a voice for those victims as well. We also want to support community policing in high crime neighborhoods, because that builds layers of trust with law enforcement. The men and women that every day they put on that that shield. They do great, extraordinary work. I go to work in the morning and I put on a suit and tie. For them to go to work in the morning, they have to put on a bulletproof vest. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. But also realize that building those levels of trust require community policing and police staffing. I know that the governor has talked about launching the Bold Blue Line initiative so we can hire more police, because what that does is when you build community policing and you build that trust, then when something happens, they know who to talk to. They feel comfortable going to that officer that they've seen in their neighborhood that has built those levels of trust, that they can talk to them, sometimes quietly. What happens when you don't have community policing is when there is an incident, you have officers that nobody knows that show up, and given the fact that given particularly the PAC with racial profiling in the past, they don't have those relationships. So you have somebody who's totally innocent who's being stopped by a police officer who's questioning them, and they're thinking, why are you stopping me? Why am I being asked for the fourth or fifth time? I have done nothing wrong. When you have community policing with officers that have built those bonds of trust, they know who to talk to. And more importantly, leaders in the community, they know, I can go talk to this officer. I know who he is. He's been embedded in our community. We built those bonds of relationship. Also, we believe in investing in witness protection. One thing I constantly heard was a lot of witnesses didn't feel comfortable coming forth to testify. And it's hard. It's really, really difficult to ask somebody, hey, you need to get on a witness stand and relive, in some cases, the worst moment of your life in a room full of strangers. That is not easy. And so we have put a record amount of money into witness protection, very much modeled on the federal side. So if somebody doesn't feel comfortable testifying, we can get them out of the situation, we can put them up, we can provide some temporary housing, because otherwise it makes these officers' job next to impossible. I see we have some of our members of the General Assembly here, Carrie Collier, Delegate Cherry, I don't know if I missed anybody, but they've been great partners with us on things like this, on community investment, on witness protection, on community policing. And so we can only do what they help us do. They've been incredible partners for us. So again, it's both investing in gang prevention, it's prosecuting repeat violent offenders and gun crime, it's investing in witness protection, and it's community policing. Now, we're very pleased that we're able to announce a message specifically to those that are these repeat violent offenders, these gang members. We're launching our public service announcement, Ceasefire Virginia. Gun crime means more time. If you're a repeat violent offender and you're considering targeting innocent Virginians, don't do it, because there will be consequences. We have hired new ceasefire prosecutors, and that their number one job is to go after these repeat violent offenders and make sure they understand using a gun in the commission of a crime has serious, serious consequences. In Virginia, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon is a 5-year mandatory sentence. By a nonviolent felon, it's mandatory minimum of 2 years. Our ceasefire prosecutors are embedded with our federal U.S. Attorney's Office. So they're also bringing cases in state and federal court. Use of a firearm in the commission of a felony is a mandatory 3 years of a first conviction and 5 years for a subsequent conviction. If it's possession with intent to distribute, it's a mandatory minimum, and you have a firearm, it's a mandatory minimum of 5 years. Use of a firearm in the furtherance of a federal crime in federal court, it's a mandatory minimum of 5 years. So our message is, for those that are even considering it, leave your gun at home. Don't take your gun with you. Don't possess it if you're a convicted felon, but don't leave home with it. Because if you commit crime, if you commit a gun crime, you'll do more time. That's our message. For our young people, we're going to invest in you. We're going to give you the skills you need to chase your dreams. But if you cross that line and you're a repeat violent offender, we're going to get involved. I'm pleased to announce that even in this short time period since we've announced our ceasefire prosecutions, in the Richmond and Petersburg area alone, we're already involved in 29 different criminal cases. These are possession or use of Glock switches. Those are illegal under federal law, which turns any semi-automatic pistol essentially into a machine gun, prosecuting machine guns, illegal use of firearms during the commission of a violent crime. Several are active cases involve people that are in possession of firearms distributing fentanyl, which is taking away so many innocent Virginians. The total drug overdose deaths in the United States in 1992 was 5,000. Last year, it was 108,000. We lost 55,000 men and women in the Vietnam War over 15 years. So it's the equivalent of 2 Vietnam Wars every 12 months in this country. Not directly tied with ceasefire, but one thing I've realized with our addiction crisis, one of the things I'm most proud of at our office, and statistically speaking, there's probably somebody here dealing with addiction. One of the great misnomers of our modern society is we think asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's not. Asking for help is the strongest, bravest thing you can ever do. For those that have loved ones that are struggling with addiction, this is what breaks your mother's heart and your family's heart and your friends' hearts. They know your potential. They know what you could be. And they see that addiction is robbing you of your potential. And a lot of people that got caught in the cycle of addiction, it was by accident. Because about 20 years ago, some of the largest pharmaceutical companies came to Virginia and treated Virginia like we were a chemistry experiment. They went and said, we have this new wonder drug. It's great for back pains and work pains. It's not addictive, don't worry. Called OxyContin. And now we know that they knew. They knew they were pushing medical providers to prescribe one of the most addictive chemicals known to man. And so many people got caught up on opioid addictions, and then they graduated to heroin, and then tragically fentanyl. So one of the things I'm most proud of is over $1 billion worth of recovery is coming back to Virginia. That does not go to my office. The General Assembly worked with us to set up the Opioid Abatement Authority. That's going to treatment into your community. So if you're struggling with addiction and you have a loved one, tell them more money and more help is coming than at any time ever. This is a ceasefire announcement, but I never, ever miss an opportunity to talk about addiction because it is everywhere. In ceasefire, again, we've mentioned over 29 criminal cases just in the Richmond-Petersburg area alone since we've gotten started. 98 active cases statewide in our ceasefire cities. And so we have been busy, extremely busy. Hampton Roads, we have 32 cases, Roanoke 22, the western region of the state, 16. So I'm proud of what we're doing. The one thing I tell my office every day, we have over 20 different sections that report to me, either consumer protection or major crime, cyber crime, civil rights, environmental protection. But what I tell everybody that works for me is I want us to view ourselves as the people's protector, whether that's your civil rights, whether that's from bad corporate actors, or whether it's from repeat violent offenders. And so it is an honor for me to be the people's protector. My staff is pointing out that I've gone way too long, so I apologize. So I'm going to wrap it up with somebody much more eloquent and elegant than I am. Please welcome the panel discussion moderator and a good dear friend. Please welcome to the stage, Ms. Clovia Lawrence. Thank you. Sorry, I got a little preacher in me.
I know. Well, amen. Good evening, Signs and Wonders. How are you? Good evening once again. Good evening. Okay, I just want to make sure we're all hearing us here today. And it's such an honor to be here tonight as your moderator. We're going to keep it simple and tight. And so if you would like to text a question, you can do so. And the number should be on the screen, but it's 804 921 7025. If you would like to text a question this evening, the number to text to is 804 921 7025. And we want to thank again Pastor Taylor. Let's give him a round of applause for opening his wonderful house for us this evening. And before I get started, I recognize a lot of elected officials that are joining us, law enforcement, wonderful individuals from the state, and also Richmond Commonwealth's attorney is joining us. Colette McKeechin is here today. And we also have workers in administration from the Virginia Department of Corrections. You can just throw your hands up. It's a lot of you guys that are here. I am Clovia Lawrence, and a lot of times folks are looking at me as a radio announcer, but that is just the job. But my passion is making sure our communities are safe and promoting public safety. I am co-founder and executive director of Project Give Back to Community, and we have been providing housing for men and women who have been released from the Virginia Department of Corrections since 2016. And it's such an honor to do so, and is equally as important. For 16 years, we believe in impacting the community and making changes. So when it comes to our kids, for the last 16 years, we have been providing scholarships to send kids to camp in Richmond and all of Central Virginia. And to date, it's been over $500,000 raised in pledges, and we've sent just under 1,500 kids to summer camp, after school, and kids to college. Now, we would like to introduce the panel. Let's start with Pastor David Taylor. You're not going to be on the panel, but just clap it up for him once again. I'm reading from my list here. Now we're going to start with the panel for real. We have Attorney General Jason Mayares. We have Colonel Frank Carpenter with the Chesterfield Police Department. We have Deputy Chief Sybil Elamine with the Richmond Police Department. We have Corrections Operations Administrator and Legislative Liaison, Mr. Marcus Elam, joining us this evening. And we're going to get started with their questions from the panel, followed by questions from the audience. And we're going to start with you, Attorney General Mayares, followed by Deputy Chief Elamine. Last month, the Virginia State Police released a report showing that crime increased from 2021 to 2022 by 4.9%. That was an increase in violent crime. But there are rockets of crime in certain parts of the state. Chesterfield is relatively low. Why is Richmond experiencing a prolonged streak of crime?
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have trouble operating heavy equipment.
Funny.
I do think it does touch on a little bit what I said earlier. I do think you're getting the aftershocks of what we have seen with COVID. I think you are a lot of young people. One thing we have, I've heard from a lot in law enforcement is a very concerned about the influx of youth violence. I also think you've had an influx of candidly, you've seen an influx of additional cartel activity in the Richmond area, which breeds with it its own level of sometimes horrific violence. And so I think you have kind of a confluence of factors, but this is what I know. I think the ceasefire initiative we've laid out, in addition to really pushing additional monies through Project Operation Bold Blue Line to get more law enforcement hired, because the fine men and women right now in the city of Richmond, I think, last I heard, they're down about 160 slots. You can't do community policing. You can't be visible and embedded in the community if you have that many that are down, trying to boost both hiring and having more men and women on our street that are protecting us. I think those are all intersection of factors that would eventually lower crime. So I think it has reached a difficult point now but I am confident in the next 9 to 12 months you're going to see much better numbers.
All right. Attorney General Mayorkas, thank you so much for the question. And Deputy Chief Elamine, why is Richmond experiencing a prolonged streak of crime?
So I would just start by, putting the numbers out there. There may be perception that there's a lot of crime in the city, but we are actually down in violent crime. So when we start to look at crime compared to last year, the numbers as far as homicides are up. And I hate even giving percentages or numbers because one is too many, right? Okay. There's no real way to say, oh, we're down in homicide if you had one. That's too many because we're talking about lives. But overall, in the city, it may seem as though there's a lot more violent crime, but actually it is not. We're roughly 7% down in violent crime. So that would include aggravated assaults, robberies, things of that nature. Interestingly enough, and thank you, sir, we have seen a rise in property crime, and that's the catalytic converter theft that I'm speaking about. So we've seen increases in shoplifting. So we have seen increases, but relatively it is safe to live in the city. So come on into the city, it's fine. So going forward, obviously, we do need programs that help us deal with people that are interested in using guns in some of these crimes. And we do have a high recidivism rate in some areas, in some neighborhoods. So I can't say that's not so, but overall, we're doing okay. We are today 170 officers down. Now I say that while also saying we're 550 officers strong, okay? So I don't want you to feel like there's no one out there patrolling the streets. We are still out there, we're still doing our job. But at every opportunity we get, I like to say, if you have any issue with the police department or any idea that this could be the job for you, we are hiring. So if you want to see changes made in law enforcement, join and become one of us. And quickly, I think we can change your mind about what we actually do in the city.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chief. Now, Colonel Carpenter, crime is crime. Chesterfield is relatively low. Why and how?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, crime is crime, as you say,
Yeah.
and crime knows no boundaries. I think we all recognize that. Crime is low in Chesterfield, but there is a significant increase in violent crime activity in Chesterfield. So originally between 21 and 22, we saw an increase of about 6%. And as of this fiscal year, we're showing an increase of about 7%. So retrospectively, we are seeing violent crime increase nationwide across the board. I'm not sure what's going on with the mic. Nationwide. And we're all a byproduct of this criminal activity that's taking place in the places where we work, live, and play. But I will say this, that, we're unapologetic as a police department, and I'm sure Deputy Chief would agree. We are all about, if you are a repeat offender and you have come into our county or our city to commit a criminal act, we will pursue you and prosecute you to the fullest extent. And I think, as Ms. Lawrence would say, Arrestefield, there's a reason.
That was a private conversation.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But, we're unapologetic about that. We're unapologetic about that because we truly value our community. Yeah. We want to ensure that it's a safe place to live and play.
Well, thank you so much for exposing me. I do appreciate that. And Attorney General, he touched on it earlier. Attorney General touched on it earlier when it comes to gun offenses and what these offenses include. So I
Right.
know you talked about them briefly,
Yeah.
but I want us to pay more attention to this when it comes to our 16 and 17-year-olds committing crime.
Well, I mean, I think the main message is understand what the law is and what the law isn't. And here's a general rule of thumb. Any crime you're thinking about doing, if you do it with a gun, you're going to prison. That's the message. You want to deal drugs? Don't bring your gun. You want to commit any type of felony? Don't do it with a gun in your possession. Leave it at home. Leave it at home. I talked to an inmate who said the worst moment of his life was the first time he had to talk to his mother on the other side of a glass. He said that's when it really hit him. Didn't hit him up until that point. It was him having to celebrate his birthday on the other side of a glass from his mother. Don't put your mother through that. Leave it at home. Dealing drugs, leave it at home. Committing any type of larceny, leave it at home. That would be the message. Gun crime means more time. That's the message we want to get to young people so they make the right decisions. I tell my staff all the time, 90% of life's problems can be traced to either poor or miscommunication. And the best way to fight bad information is with good information. So we think it's important to speak with clarity to Virginians and say, hey, this is the penalty. Be mindful of that. And we think at the end of the day, when the right information is with individuals, they can make the right decisions.
All right, thank you so much for that, Attorney General. Mr. Elam, Virginia has among the lowest rate of recidivism in the nation at 20%. What is the connection between prisoner reentry and crime by repeat offenders?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that, and we say this in our department all the time, that reentry is everybody's business. We, as a department, our main goal is helping people to be better and prepare them for release. And I don't know if everybody is aware that the majority of the people who are incarcerated do come home, even after serving long sentences. So you can see the challenges or understand the challenges that those folks may have if they've been incarcerated for a long period of time. But reentry is everybody's business. It's not just the Department of Corrections who can ensure that people don't come back to prison. Now, we're integral in that. We're a primary element of reentry. But reentry really happens in the community. And that means, in terms of the community's involvement, is the folks that have been incarcerated need the same resources and services that those of us who've never been incarcerated need. They need housing. They need educational opportunities. They need career opportunities. And I say career opportunities as opposed to work opportunities, because most of us, when we go into in our businesses or work, we're looking for a career. And that's longer lasting than just someone finding a job. Now, a job's great, gotta have it. But what we would like to see and what we need from the community is those career opportunities. People in the community who've never been incarcerated need medical services. They need mental health services. So the folks that are incarcerated don't need any more or less than what we as general citizens need. They just need more assistance in achieving that. Some have never had it. Some have had it and lost it, and they need to get it back. The difference is we don't have the same barriers they have had in terms of being incarcerated. And there's stigmas that go along with that. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that, and why we've been so successful as an agency, is we understand that incarceration, incapacitation is not long lasting. We can go to our rooms right now and sit in our room for the next 5 or 6 hours and not have opportunities to do things, and things can seem a certain way. We don't have the same influences in that room. We don't have the same barriers in that room. But the moment we walk out the door, there's challenges and barriers that everybody is going to be exposed to. So simply incarcerating somebody, short period or long periods of time, does not make for long-lasting public safety or reentry. So we have to make sure, and we as an agency have done a huge transition over a long period of time to make sure that our services that we provide folks while they're incarcerated is evidence-based, means that what we're doing is proven to work. And simply saying that a program is successful is not enough. The evidence and the science has to show that what we're providing is proven to work. And one of the main things that we do is we now really do a great job of focusing on someone's thinking, not just their behavior. Focusing on their behavior is too late. The behavior's already taken place. You can't go back and change the behavior. How we get better and how we help people stay out longer is focus on their thinking and show them how their thinking is related to their actions and their outcomes. So our programming, our resources are all shown to be proven and shown to help address that thinking, to help reduce bad behavior, encourage and model the good behavior that we all want to see and we do ourselves. And when somebody can walk out of prison and have a better way of thinking and understand how that's tied to their success, they have a better chance of long-term public safety and low recidivism. Now the reality is, our recidivism rate, 1 or 2 in the nation, has been that way for the last several years. 20%, 20.8, I believe it is right now. But what we don't forget is the Department of Corrections, that in that 20% are individuals that still need services, still need assistance. So we, again, as an agency, have to make sure we're doing what we can to focus on them, and we have to make sure that we're including the community, and the community has to buy in. The community has to be a partner. We need business leaders. We need resources, other agencies to really step up and make sure they're giving us what we need and what you all deserve as a community to help make sure that folks come back to you better than they were when they left. And that is our overall goal.
And that promotes public safety. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to move right along. And we want you, Deputy Chief Elamine, to answer this question. And of course, Colonel Carpenter, how is the police staffing and the vacancy problem, how are we addressing that in Richmond and Chesterfield, and how is it impacting public safety? Let's start with you first, Deputy Chief. She want to pass the mic.
We're just going to set it over there. So what we realized quickly is that we have 550 police officers, so we have 550 recruiters. So every time we have the ability to ask someone to become a part of the Richmond Police Department family, we do. And I mean, if I see you in Food Lion and you're the security guard standing by the door, you have a gun, you're at work, you look somewhat quasi-fit, you'll make it through the department, then I want you.
Oh, you have to be fit, right?
You don't have to be fit. We're going to make you fit.
Okay.
Okay? I can teach you to run faster. All right? I can't teach you character. I can't teach you integrity. I can't teach you work ethic. I can't teach you to come to work every day with a positive attitude. I can't teach you those things. All right? But if you are able-bodied and you are interested, and I see you're already security, so you sort of understand how uniforms work, and you may be armed, then I want you immediately. So every single time I see someone, I'm making that call. I'm giving you my card, okay? I'm the best advertisement the city is going to have. They don't pay me enough for this.
I want to go work.
Okay, you should. You should. You should, okay? And so I say when I go into community meetings, again, if you have an issue with your police department, if you believe they're doing something nefarious, if whatever that idea is, you should show up because you are the change. We are the change. I am what the Richmond Police Department looks like, okay? And if you want your department to look or represent you, then you have to show up. That's the only way I see it happening. Unfortunately, you can't just make cops. It takes about a year to get you into the full uniform. So there's some training involved. Trust me, you'll be fine. You can do it. Barry, if you're ready, come with me. Carol, Malik, I know it might be a little too late, but please,
No, Brother Carol is always ready.
I know, I think he can. I believe he can. So my point is, every time we have the opportunity to recruit, we try to recruit. The second thing is we just started a new program where we are hiring retired police officers. And I see some retired police officers in here. John Dixon, I
Yeah.
see Hamlet Hood over there.
There go Big Ham.
I know, I see him in the back. I think we can fit the same size shirt. We're the same height. I think we can do this, Ham. So we are hiring retired police officers. So if you retired in the past 5 years in law enforcement, you can come back to the city of Richmond. We're
The
also
state is not going to give up Hamlet. I just want to let you know that.
I know. But they did such a great job.
Yeah.
They did. He did such a great job. He's the gang guru.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were a lateral, okay, and you work in Chesterfield, just saying.
Ooh.
Just saying.
Uh-oh.
They poached us, okay? So if you are a lateral officer, you can also transfer. And that is out of state as well. So if you know someone upstate and we might make a little bit more money in the city, then please come as well. We are at just about every college, just about every job fair, and social media, every platform. We are trying to get people that want to become police officers. But I know what Deputy Chief Carpenter is going to say is that everyone is not feeling being a police officer today, right? That's why we need you, okay? That's exactly why we need you, to change what people believe so that they see you, the person they know, at the Food Lion, right? Saying, hey, come on and work with us. So we have several irons in the fire, but unfortunately, it's a process that you have to get through, and it can be a lengthy process. So again, that's what we're doing. I've been talking for
And you're
5 minutes.
recruiting from
And I'm a
Chesterfield, too.
recruiter for
Okay. And you,
for Richmond.
yeah, but you
Police.
trying to pull people.
Deputy.
I knew I should have got
You
the mic
remember? I
first.
know it.
Should
See?
have got it first. No, a lot of the same efforts are taking place in the county of Chesterfield as well. I think the biggest challenge that we all face as policing professionals is the stigma associated with the profession in and of itself. Good people get tired of hearing that they're bad people, if that makes sense. People in this profession really are good people. I know we have some outlier type situations that have occurred, but it really does not define the whole. So until we, and I say we as a people because I employ you as well, emphasize the importance of policing and public safety in our communities and join forces and recruit and advocate for people serving in that capacity, we will continue to struggle with this recruitment effort across the board because it's challenging. You have a lot of young people who are coming out of college, a lot of people going to college acquiring a lot of debt, and then they're coming into the profession and they're unable to live, right? Because of the debt they've acquired in college and then the expenses of living on their own. We're finding young people coming in with, $100,000 worth of debt out the gate. But we have a saying in Chesterfield that everyone is a recruiter, and we mean that wholeheartedly. If we see someone who fits the bill and truly has a commitment to service, then we're going to approach them and we're going to ask them, have you ever thought about being a police officer? So a lot of things that Deputy Chief has mentioned, we're doing in Chesterfield as well. But one thing I did want to highlight as it relates to a project and a program that we have in Chesterfield is our police service aides. We have taken it a step further and employed police service aides, and you can be one from the age of 18 to 21. And of course, we have a cadet program, and then we have, summer camps and things like that. So we're creating a pipeline of young people who have become acclimated to the profession, and we have seen some tremendous yield on that. The police service aides make upwards of $45,000 a year, and I don't know about you, if I was 18 making $45,000 a year with benefits, that would be pretty impressive, right? And come off mom and dad's
What are
insurance.
some of the qualifications for that community service? I'm not in that 18 to 21
Yeah.
bracket, but just.
Yeah, no,
what is-
of course, they go through the same level background process that a police officer would, which is high yield, because if you can make it through that background process, Once you become a police service aide, it's just a matter of a refresh. You go right into the academy. We have had, and the qualifications are just being able to pass the polygraph, pass the physical exam, ensure that your driving record is acceptable, make sure that there's no criminal issues, criminal history issues. So it's pretty simple, but they don't do any enforcement activities. They support. So what does that mean? That helps our officers respond to the important calls. They augment and they provide services to our community. They take reports that officers don't necessarily have to go to, that don't require enforcement action. So part of that recruitment effort centers around building a force within a force, a police department within a police department, and that police service aide has been integral in that process.
Thank you so much. Once again, if you would like to text a question to us, you can do so at 804-921-7025. That's 804-921-7025. And this is for all of the folks who are watching us on Facebook right now at Signs and Wonders. Now, this is going to be the final question because I want to get to the questions from the audience. How do we do a better job, and you just spoke on it a little bit, Colonel Carpenter, how do we do a better job of engaging young people who might be drawn to crime? Give us some examples on what we can do. We can start with you, Attorney General J.C. or
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's a little bit of what I touched on in my remarks, that so many young people have this desperate desire to belong. And so recognize that. I think the other is to make sure the messaging is, if you are going down this path of gang violence, of joining gang violence and gang activity, that's going to take you into a cul-de-sac. That's not going to put you on the highway to your dream. And so when we talk about, and so many of the people that I mean, listen, I come from a broken home. The good Lord put great men in my life at opportune times to give me that mentorship that I needed. And so I think a lot of what we have talked about when we talk about community service boards and boys and girls clubs, and I think there absolutely is a critical component of the faith community, is to invest in young people's lives. I think mentorship is one of the most important things because, candidly, when I was a teenager, a lot of teenagers don't know what it is to be a man. They need to be able to talk to and be mentored by other individuals that can invest in their lives. And so oftentimes they get caught up, I think, in a gang activity, not because they think, oh, I want to go commit some type of violent action or break the law. It's, I feel belonged here. I felt a sense of community here. And so we have to replace that. We both have to give them a message that this is going to take you down, again, to a cul-de-sac that's not going to get you to your highway of your dreams, and we're going to invest in you. Because I do think, other than hearing maybe the words, I love you, some of the most important words you can hear from somebody is, I believe in you. I know what your potential is. And these people that you are right now, that are, they're not going to be, that they don't believe in you the way I do, because they want to take you down a different path. And I think, that's why we've always said ceasefire was two parallel tracks. We're obviously going to prosecute violent crime, but then also putting investment in the communities to invest in young people's lives so they go down a different path. I think that's a critical component.
Now, I want to thank you so much for that comment. So when we talk about our youth, our kids, they want a sense of belonging when you met with some parents. But when we look at the programs that we have and that we're funding, they're only going to be open a few hours. So a lot of the gang members and all of this gang activity and group activities, right, they're spending more time, 8, 10, 24 hours. So how do we work that? How do we fix that? How do we spend more hours? How do we have 24-hour recreation centers and more? How do we do that? How do we fund that? Who's interested in doing that?
So I don't think that
I'm
was
just a
for me.
passionate mama. That's all.
I don't know if that was for me exactly, but I will tell you this. By the time I ever meet a 14-year-old boy that's breaking the law, a 14-year-old girl that's breaking the law, by the time we have a conversation I'm probably 12 years too late. The best anti-crime, the best prevention I've seen is a mother and a father with aunts and uncles and cousins, and y'all know what I'm talking about.
Talk about that village. Let's go.
So, and I'm sure the deputy chief is going to say the same thing. I'm at work for roughly 17 hours some days. That's a long day, and I have 3 sons. So what are my sons doing during that time? They're with my family because it takes a village. They're in some program that I monitor and just do spot checks. My kids will tell you that I do search warrants on book bags and cell phones.
I love it.
I don't care.
So do
I don't care. You don't own it.
You don't own
okay? I paid the bill.
Okay,
Right?
teach.
I check your social media. I created an account, a fake account, so I could check your social media.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you want to be a great parent, you have to be vigilant. And you need partners, okay? So while of course, local government, your taxes will pay for a lot of great programs, but there is not a single program more valuable than a mother and a father, sisters and brothers, that are holding you accountable. So the only,
That's good.
the,
That's good.
and I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir literally, okay? I see Charles and Michelle and Cruz here. But you know that the thing that changes the trajectory of a child is really what you said. It's the belief that I believe in you. You teach a child their value. You teach a child what they're worth. They are less likely to listen to someone else tell them to do something that's contrary to that. Okay?
Absolutely.
So when I take off this uniform, I like to think that I'm still, the deputy chief in my house, but I'm not. I'm a mom. I'm a 5-foot mom, and I will take on anybody, and I do mean anybody, that thinks you're just going to take my child, turn them to this, without hearing something from me. Now, I know Charles, he says this, and I love it. I'm not going to say it the way you say it, but I love the thought that to some degree we're afraid to raise our own children. We're afraid to say, hey, you can't do that. You can't go. Turn it off. Can't watch it. I don't care. If I'm paying for it, these are the rules. So while local government should provide, a myriad of, yes, we have all those things, but you are the front defense. And I don't mean just your child. If I see your child and you live in my neighborhood, okay, and you appear to be doing something that I know your mother wouldn't appreciate,
I'm saying something.
I'm gonna say, hey, James, what are you
Carla?
doing out here, honey? Does your mom know? Yeah, I will. So again, you might think, oh, well, she's just a busybody, or she just thinks she's a cop and that she's protected. No, it's because I know.
Yes. Right.
That's what worked in my neighborhood. That's what worked for my brothers and sisters. That's what works for me. And until you prove to me that it doesn't work, well, that's the sort of stance that I take. So, yes, programming, but by the time your 13-year-old, 14-year-old gets to see a police officer and you are relying on law enforcement to stop your child from doing something, you are 12 years too late, okay? So, it takes more than one person. And if you are a single parent, it takes everybody. Instead of tearing each other down on the saying this and saying that, no, help
Absolutely.
somebody. Be better.
Yeah.
And then become a Richmond Police Department and do this thing.
Look, I had to get it out you, Civil, because you were trying to fly real low.
Well, first, I'd be negligent if I didn't say that I think you all should come work for the Department of Corrections. So, yeah, but it's who has the mic last, not first. We're the largest state agency in the Commonwealth. We have great state benefits, and we're hiring for probation officer, correction officer,
holidays, 14
nurse,
days
doctor, counselor, mental health, environmental specialist, wastewater treatment. anything you have in the community, we're hiring for. So come work for us. See me at the door before you go. I had a lot of things going through my head, while people were talking. If anybody knows me, that can be good or bad. But I think the reason I did is because there's no one cookie cutter solution for what we do with our children. And obviously, I work in the adult system, but I've had children, and I was a child once, and I grew up without a father, never knew him. My mother raised 3 knucklehead boys by herself, and she had her challenges, but so none of us in the room are too far away from somebody we know or a circumstance or an issue where we can honestly say, this doesn't affect me. Because I go back to, you can pay me now or pay me later. You can invest in and do the right things to be proactive, or you can use your hard tax dollars to fund the Department of Juvenile Justice or the Department of Corrections. I would want my tax dollars to go into a proactive approach. And that is going to take, like she said, that's going to take everybody.
Yeah.
And, a good friend of mine named Jessica Lee, who's up there in the front right here, would tell me all the time that, the one thing that we have to do when we want to find out how we show value or what other people feel is appreciation and that they're valued is to ask them. Most of us in here are far away from a number of years from being a child, but we automatically go back to our own thinking, what worked for us, what I experienced, and think that's going to work for our kids. It's not going to work. Evidence already shows that.
It's not going to.
So we have to ask them. And I'm not saying we're trying to negotiate with our children to get them to do what's right. We're going to discipline, we're going to tell them what to do, we're going to guide them because that's what we should do. But when we're talking about what works for them and how they are valued and how the community values them, we have to ask them. They're different than us. Their experiences are different. Their levels of learning are different. Their creative approaches are different. We have to ask them. And I think if we spend more time asking them in terms of how they like to be valued or show appreciation, we can prepare better. We can spend dollars the right way and use the right programs, but we have to include them, especially when we're hiring people, and we're going through this right now as a department. We're hiring younger and younger. And what we're learning is that we have to look at how we're doing things different in the prison system just to get new people to come in. I was new once, and I remember when I first came in, people didn't want to listen to me because I was new and I wasn't part of the old group. That doesn't work. The work ethic's different. I'm not saying less. I'm saying it's different. And sometimes we don't value that because it doesn't look like what we're used to. But we have to think differently. If we continue to do the same things over and over again and we don't see change, we all know what that signifies. So we really have to make sure we're asking them, we're doing things different, we're open to doing things differently. Most of the time, it's us as the adults that are struggling. It's not the kids. It's us. But we put that on them because they're not conforming to what we want them to do completely. Yes, they got to conform to laws and rules. But they can skin a cat differently than we can, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to make sure we're engaging them and truly listening to them and providing them the resources that are needed now. The workforce is different, so the skills need to be different. We're going through that right now as a department as well. We have to make sure we prepare people for the current job force, not what the job force was 20 years ago. And as a community, we have to do that as well. And we're not doing that collectively because we got to talk to each other. Your community is just as affected as mine. I don't care how affluent it is or less affluent it is. Everybody's community is affected. We definitely have to make sure we're taking that approach and thinking differently.
Thank you so much, Mr. Elam. All right. And this is the final remark from you because we want to get to the audience questions. You on? Go ahead.
Testing 1, 2.
Okay.
All right. So, first of all, let me start off by saying outstanding job by those that have spoken before me, because a lot of what I was going to say centered around it starts with us, right? And it's not me, myself, and I. It's we, right? It's not the individual approach to it, but it's a collective approach to deterring our children from crime. When you think about young people, and I definitely understand because I come from a broken home as well. But my father was active in my life. But the other thing is, there's homes where people are absent. And I think it's important that we work to fill those gaps. And I say that from the perspective of whether you're an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a grandma, whatever the case may be, we have to value our youth. And we have to teach them what they don't really know, right? You don't know what you don't know. If all they know is the street and all they know is what the young man on the corner is telling them is right, then that's all they know. I am a firm believer that people can change. They just need to be exposed to something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say that from the perspective of, before, I think we all recognized that we were in positions and places in our life until we were educated or we were exposed to something different. We thought we were in a good place. And if you think about it, before you received your degrees, before you went off to higher education institutions, started making the money that you make, you thought you were okay. But then once you got exposed to something different, you saw the error of your way. And I think that is where we can leverage our relationship with our youth, is to show them a different life. And in showing them a different life, that means sacrifice and commitment from each and every one of us. Regardless of our capacities or professions, we have to invest in them so they see something different and aspire to do something better. So with everything that else was said, I just wanted to share that it is a collective effort to change what our youth are doing and how they perceive life today.
Colonel Carpenter, thank you so much. Thank you all for your comments. And now we're going to move on over from questions by text. And if you would like to text a question, you can do so at 804-921-7025. Here's the first question. Kenya Saray, 16-year-old business owner and student. What are the effective ways we can lower the crime rates? How can communities and law enforcement better partner to enforce these positive changes? If anyone would like to answer.
Well, I never miss the opportunity to talk, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I think it goes back to from my perspective, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. The community has to be engaged. It's not one person's problem. You just said that a minute ago. It's not one person's problem. I won't even say a problem. It's not one person's issue or concern. It's everybody's. We have to be on the same page. If one group of people or one agency or one business says, well, I'm just going to let them do it, we're missing an opportunity. I think everybody has to be involved and understand how important they are and critical they are in helping people be better. It's got to be that way. It's not simple in order to do it, but I think it's a simple attitude and approach. The issue is the willingness to do it. That's where we struggle. People have to understand that their input, how small or how large seemingly, is valuable to those individuals. And if we're not, really engaged and, understanding how I can help make a difference, I'm part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Thank you, Marcus. Attorney General.
I think as well, it's using technology also to help educate folks to make better choices. I mean, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of my skis of my staff, but one thing's we're learning. Maybe it's the Lord telling me not to say this. Does this still work? But one of the technologies we're looking at, this is what we've seen. You have seen after there is a shooting, particularly gang-related shooting, oftentimes what happens is that someone will go and record a video, like a diss video, calling them out by name, saying there's going to be retaliation, and then there's this expectation of action. Well, the technology exists now that we're looking at, that we're able to pre-make short, when you watch YouTube, they have those short videos that will pop up, that will literally identify where the shooting occurred, down to the neighborhood block, and if somebody's uploading a video, the law enforcement can identify it. In the middle of this diss video, there's a video, somebody's watching it, with somebody's insulting somebody and and saying all types of negative things about this person. In the middle of it, it says, listen, there's consequences. Here's the penalties. And it's a de-escalation tactic, because I tell my staff all the time, I never think I'm the smartest person in any room I walk into. I'm smart enough to know when I hear good ideas. These are ideas that have been worked in other areas, at other departments, that have been effective. And so that's one of the ways of leveraging technology to communicate a message, to fight bad information, where somebody is maybe hearing this video that's really designed in many ways to incite violence, and getting a different message. And so when we talk about Virginia ceasefire, what we're talking about is using every tool we can to leverage as much as possible, whether it's technology, investment in young people, and also going after repeat violent offenders, to have a holistic approach to try to lower violence. And if it causes just one person to stop, think, and ponder the ramifications, if they were actually to act on their kind of natural instinct to lash out, then it's another tool in the toolkit to lower violence.
I want to make sure I get everybody's questions. Thank you so much for that comment. Victoria Johnson is a Chesterfield mother, and her question is, can you talk more about some of the preventive community programs Ceasefire is supporting in the area?
So we do grant money to proven entities that have a track record of success. And the idea is to identify those that have a proven track record of success and give them additional resources so they can expand their outreach. So whether it's New Legacy Family Services, $40,000 for reentry services for training, additional grant to Kinfolk for mentoring for young people, New Life Community Center for job training, six-figure grant to Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority for revitalization service projects. So the idea is, what are actual entities we can partner up with that have a proven track record that can help with reentry, with mentorship, with job training, with revitalization. And so those are some of the specific entities that we partner up with. And every locality of our ceasefire cities that are part of Virginia ceasefire, every locality is going to be slightly different. So whether it's Portsmouth or Norfolk or Hampton or Newport News or Richmond or Petersburg or Danville or Emporia or Roanoke or Lynchburg, every one of our Virginia ceasefire cities is going to be slightly different, because one of the things we believe in is we're not going to have a cookie cutter in every single locality. It's going to be slightly different. The programs are probably going to be slightly different. So we look at it, and each city is going to be somewhat different on who's going to get the grant funding.
All right, thank you for that. Going on to the next question. Hopewell just recently began a community-based program called Group Violence Intervention, a program that finds the small percentage of likely offenders in any given community and provides them with the support they need to leave a life of violence. There you go. There was money offered by the AG office for other localities to do GVI. Will they do it? If not, why?
Well, I guess some of that is going to be dependent upon the General Assembly. One of the things we want to be able to show is at the end of the year success, we have group violence intervention coordinators, GVIs, that we want to have embedded, and we want to expand Virginia ceasefire to more cities. Obviously, we believe it's a partnership with our localities. Every locality that we have met with, the police chiefs have been very receptive, saying, we want to partner with you. They've been great partners with us in this process. And so that's been a big, if a locality is interested in being part of Virginia ceasefire, we will talk to them. We will look to get resources from the General Assembly so they can partner with us and be part of something I think very special that we're doing in our ceasefire cities.
Thank you. Now on to the next question from Mr. Bill Atkins, Progress Index, Petersburg. Since Partnership for Petersburg was announced last August, we have seen some drops in some areas of violent crime, but the homicide level in the city is roughly the same as before Partnership for Petersburg. How will Operation Ceasefire complement that partnership and bring the most violent of the crimes, the murder rate down to where people feel safe to go outside?
So Partnership in Petersburg is this initiative the governor announced that looked at Petersburg holistically and was doing massive investments not just in law enforcement, but also healthcare and mental health services and addiction services. So Partnership for Petersburg is a much bigger initiative than just public safety. Public safety is one component of that, but I actually had a meeting earlier this morning with the Petersburg police chief. They have seen some great numbers in certain crimes. Goodness, like I said, I have trouble operating heavy equipment. But this is also going to take time. At the end of the day, this is going to be building block upon building block. So both investment in young people, but also getting the word out. If you prosecute a repeat violent offender and the word gets out, hey, this individual that I'm aware of just got prosecuted and he's looking at serious time for a gun crime, I'm going to not bring my gun. I'm not going to be part of this. That takes time for the word to get out. So we look forward to the end of the year, looking where we are, but we're very, very confident with our preliminary numbers that you're going to see a drop. And what I would just say is these things take time. We're building the building blocks to build something that is sturdy, that hopefully has a long-term impact in the community.
All right, thank you. And we have a couple of anonymous questions. I was a school administrator in the city of Petersburg, and the students would fight to the point of being charged by the SROs only to have it fail in courts. Students return back to school without a viable consequence or diversion program, and weeks later, another incident. How can we strengthen the partnerships between schools and local police and hold adults and students accountable for their actions?
So I think SROs are necessary and they're critical. And are you a SRO? Okay, but we're hiring SROs. No, I'm kidding.
He's going to apply for the Richmond Police Department, I'm telling you.
So the wonderful thing about SROs, I know that initially there was some, pushback about having officers in the schools. But I'll tell you this. The officers, our SROs, they know these kids, okay? So when you see this person constantly, you see them every day in the school, they know the student's name, they know who their brothers and sisters are, they know who's trying to bully, they know more information sometimes, more so than the parent, and sometimes more so than the teacher, okay? So I think it's critical. One, the second thing is it obviously will make the school appear to be a bit more safe, obviously. But what you don't want is 10, 20 SROs in the schools to keep your kids safe. That's not the idea there either. But it is a great tool to use because you do get to know these children. And when you see them out, they're like, oh, that's officer such and such. My brother is a police officer, and he sees kids in the schools all the time. He's worked with the LIFE program, some kids that are, troubled youth. That's how police build relationships. And it's not in an aggressive or hostile or, this traffic stop in the middle of the night where it's not that. It's your everyday, this is who I am, and I am the person that you can come to if you're having issues. So I know that the SRO program is very beneficial, especially in the city, and we have added more SROs in the schools. So right now, they're in the majority of the high schools and in the middle schools. We would love to put them in the elementary schools as well. It's just we're talking about bandwidth and staffing. But I do know that that is a great program. The other thing, if your school doesn't have an SRO, and I'll relate this to a shooting that happened outside of one of our elementary schools. It didn't happen in the school. A parent was upset with another person coming out of the school, and unfortunately they decided to bring that fight to the school and shoot someone in front of an elementary school. Um, the teachers in the school, the staff in the school, they had practiced the drill: lock the door, turn off the lights, shelter in place, move the kids here. They had done that. They had done it so much they were upset with the vice principal, because they're like, look, we don't need to do this drill anymore. But the vice principal knew enough to know that it might just happen in the city of Richmond. So when it did, the staff saved those kids. It wasn't, we came after someone dialed 911, okay? The staff, without guns, without weapons, you don't need to give teachers, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a good emergency plan, okay? A number to call, a phone tree, telling your child what to do, telling your child how to contact you if something occurs, being a member of the PTA, being a face in the school that can be recognized. With law enforcement, yes, but again, I have to push it back to the parents, because there are more of you than it is of us. You are the best eyes and ears. You are the best protectors. I certainly trust you, obviously, with making sure that just the smallest things, getting your kids on the buses, kids telling you stuff, rumors that there's going to be a fight, social media. I mean, all of these things you have got to monitor. Don't rely on law enforcement to be able to catch everything, because we simply can't. We don't have the bandwidth. But you do. You've got the access codes and the passwords and the thumbprint and the face, all of those things. Check those things. Keep up with your children. If there's a fight in the school and you hear about it with your child brings that home, when my son tells me, hey, Mom, there was a fight on the bus, I have two questions. What did you do? Did you record it? I want you to get down. I don't want you to have your phone out so you can post it everywhere and engage, and then it goes out with 100 million likes and you think that's the way you're going to make friends. No, okay? You need to get down and make sure you didn't start the fight and nobody started the fight with you. So again, teaching your child what to do if something happens in the school, ensuring that the teachers and staff and faculty, and I mean these were the janitors, everybody knew what to do when the alarm went off. That's the way you keep your kids safe. Be the parent that is engaged in every part of your child's school day. You are what's going to keep your child safe. We're coming, okay? We're coming. But you are the first line of defense.
Well, thank you so much. Attorney General's staff is saying only 2 more questions. To follow this up, and the office has all of the questions, and we'll make sure we get the questions answered at a later time, but we're going to do 2 more questions. And the next question that we're going to do is, what can be done to support those who have been rehabilitated and released from prison during reentry? There is a stigma around those with a criminal record that makes it hard to find jobs and get back on their feet. Mr. Elam.
Okay, thank you. 2 things really come to mind that I think is pretty significant. One, and Jessica reminded me that this is something we need to make sure we remind everybody, that we have reentry councils that serve every community. Back when Governor McDonnell came into office, we started the Virginia Reentry Initiative. And part of that initiative required the chiefs of probation and parole to co-convene with the directors of the local Department of Social Services, a group of individuals that can help provide critical resources for folks that are being released to the community. And every member in the community can be a part of that council. Now, we kind of fell off a little bit because of COVID, but we are right now as a department refocusing our efforts and going to be working towards revitalizing those councils across the Commonwealth. Every single probation and parole district, we have 43 of them, has a chief probation officer, and every one of those chiefs serve as a co-convener for those reentry councils. And those councils are made up of those folks, those leaders those resources in the community that, again, can help provide resources for people. Not just jobs, because jobs is a critical thing, and that's one of the things that we know from evidence, that if people have a good career and skill-based, that they're going to stay out longer. They're going to have less rates of recidivism. They're going to commit less crimes and go back to prisons. So we know that's a part of it, but there are other critical resources that we're learning over time that are crucial for those folks that are coming out of prisons and jails. Mental health services is huge. We need mental health providers. And you mentioned earlier about the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. That is one of the critical areas that is so stigmatized. Very few people still today will ask for help when they need it prior to going into some kind of crisis. So we need mental health resources. And when we don't treat folks with mental health resources, you know where they end up? Back in jail and back in prison. And we're turning into a mental health department, not one that's really focused on what needs to be. People with mental health resources should not be serving time in prison. We should be spending more time and effort in the community providing those resources. Reentry councils are going to be huge for that. Again, I go back to what I said the other approach is, making sure we as an agency let you all know how valuable you are, and that there's benefits out there to you to help with people that are being released. Less crime, obviously. More taxpayers, obviously. Those are things that are obvious. But, you know, they're family members, they're friends, they're people that are coming out. Most of us know somebody or have somebody in our families who've served time or been in trouble and need help. We got to remember that too. It's not just somebody's problem who's been incarcerated. They need resources. Yeah. They need help. And how we get rid of the stigma, I believe everybody in this room is here because they care. You have a sphere of influence. You can go back and talk to your family members, your friends, your business leaders, and tell them how important this is for them. There's a bonding program out there right now for businesses that if you hire somebody and something negative happens, you're going to be protected. There's tax credit for people who hire folks that have been incarcerated. You can get a tax break for hiring every person that's been incarcerated. So our job as an agency is to continue to educate the community in terms of what they can do for us, but it's also everybody's responsibility in the community to step up to the plate. And if you say you want a better community, you got to do your part. And that means folks that are coming out, you do the best you can for them.
Mr. Elam, thank you. And this is the final question going to Attorney General Jason Miyares. And for all of the people who submitted your questions by text, we're going to make sure the Attorney General's office answer those questions. But here's the final one, Attorney General. What makes ceasefire different than any other violence prevention programs?
Well, I think in the past what you've had is people have tried to do one track when you need multiple tracks. So you need prisoner reentry programs. You know, I'm very proud of the fact that our office did a job fair where we connected employers with, I have a faith of second chances. I believe America is a nation of second chances. And it was a moment of connecting individuals that believed in dignity of work and employers that were looking for employees. So you need both prisoner reentries. You need those investments into young people saying, I believe in you, giving them both those life skills and those mentorship skills. You need group violence coordinators. You need witness protection programs that allow witnesses to be able to come forward and feel that they can testify. And then finally, obviously, you have the prosecution of those repeat violent offenders. So it is not just one track, it's multiple tracks, all heading to the same direction, which are safer streets, safer neighborhoods, where people aren't looking over their shoulder in fear. That's what Virginia Ceasefire is about. That's what we're confident in the day we're going to get to that place where our young people feel safe, our communities feel safe, and we're building a brighter Commonwealth.
Thank you so much. And we would like to thank all elected officials and law enforcement for joining us this evening. And I also want to recognize Congressman Rob Whitman for joining us this evening. Thank you so much for being here. And this is going to conclude the Public Safety Forum. But once again, with all of the questions that you have, the Attorney General's office, they have all of your text messages and the questions, and they're going to get them answered. We want to thank all of the nonprofits, community service organizations for joining us here tonight. We can do this. Giving up is not an option. We must speak the opposite of defeat, not only speaking as a mother, but speaking as a community advocate as well. And now we can fellowship and get some dinner. God bless you, and thank you for coming.